Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amit, and I lead partnerships here at BlueShift. And I'm super excited to be back at BlueShift. I'll tell you that story later. I'm honored to be moderating the panel with our amazing partners, Solvena and Smart Panda Labs. But before I get there, I also wanted to acknowledge some of our other partners in attendance. We're building a great partner ecosystem. We have amazing sort of initiatives in play in 2024 that allows us to drive growth through our partner ecosystem, as well as tech and agency partnerships. I know it's been a long day. Happy hour is only about 45 minutes away. I'm ready. I see nodding. Everyone ready? Yep. But I promise you the next 20 minutes will be fun, insightful, and we're going to get some great piece of advice from both Tim and Shamir. With that, I'll hand it over to Tim and Shamir for brief introductions, and we'll kind of take it from there.
Awesome. I'll go first. I reside in Chicago, or outside of Chicago. I'll start there. For introductions, I'll start a little bit of background about myself. I've been in consulting for my entire career. But I was a practitioner in marketing throughout that entire time period. Before it was cool, when it was database marketing, when it was data warehousing, data marts, BI, all the other stuff, and the evolution of marketing automation, CDPs, and now the fun composable CDP, all of the fun, right? But started off in Deloitte and then had stops at other consulting firms and then joined Solvena about 5 years ago. And so who is Solvena? We go to market with focus on data, marketing, and analytics. So if you think of a Venn diagram, somebody just mentioned a little bit ago, data, marketing, and analytics, we like to help at the intersection of those three things. So that's where the alignment with BlueShift comes in, because we help, so if you think about BlueShift in particular, we help kind of extend the solutions consulting team with implementations, onboarding, marketing operations, where we can help create campaigns, automate it, extend it, et cetera. But then we help on the complementary pieces as well. So the data upstream, so when they talk about Snowflake and Databricks and Google Cloud, BigQuery, other things that we're connecting to, we help our clients get the data correct in those platforms and then load it into BlueShift. Similarly, from the analytics perspective, we help downstream, right? So we saw some really great stuff in the BlueShift platform for reporting and insights, but there's also the enterprise side of analytics and reporting. So Tableau, it could get into R, Python, SAS, et cetera. So we help even beyond in the broader scope of analytics and BI. So data, marketing, analytics, with a lot of BlueShift experience in the middle there. So, sorry.
No problem. I'm from Florida. I'm not from Chicago. So this is a little chilly for me here right now. So my career started in the corporate world. So started with Southwest Airlines, spent some time with NBC Universal, then Disney, Marriott, and then after Marriott, co-founded Smart Panda Labs. So the premise of Smart Panda Labs is really focusing on the what we call the post-click digital experience. So as marketers, not the marketers in this room, but marketers in places other than this room, we tend to think that advertising is the solution to every problem. And it's like, okay, things are down, what do? We throw more money at it. What we fail to sometimes remember is that people spend a fraction of their time with the advertising. They spend the overwhelming majority of their time after that on the website, interacting with emails. That's the basis of making the decision. And yet, that's not where we spend our energy and effort and money. In fact, that's the hardest place to get the energy and effort and money oftentimes. And one of the big reasons for that is because once someone clicks on the ad, things get complicated. Spending money is easy. Going on to Google Ads and turning up the dial, that's super easy. In fact, Google encourages it and Meta encourages it. That's what they want you to do, turn up the dial. They're the solution to every problem. So really focus on that post-click, on helping people figure out how they can maximize their websites, how they can drive greater profitability by doing that, conversion rate optimization, understanding the customer experience and doing research in that regard, and then developing those relationships via email and SMS, nurturing those customers, getting them to convert, getting them to come back, building lifetime value, doing all those things that ultimately really drive the business metrics that matter to their organization. And at the same time, ultimately getting better ROI on the advertising so that as ad costs continue to rise, you're getting better return on ad spend, and ultimately that's what's going to help move the business forward.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. Let's talk a little bit about trends. I know we've had some great discussions today, but you work with clients across different verticals, industries. what would you say are maybe some of the, the few trends that are top of mind across your customers?
Sure, I'll start.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to go with AI, of course. Have to insert that. We're going to talk about MarTech optimization. And then third, I'm going to do web traffic resolution. So we try to pull some different themes because we're being a little repetitive. So trying to avoid that. So from the AI perspective, okay, I'm going to just get that quota in. AI, you gotta say it a lot. But I'm not going to talk about, thank you. Not going to do just Gen AI or predictive AI. So we talked a lot about that. But the other side of that whole coin that we're seeing as a trend is how to keep up with all the new releases that are introducing AI. So even with Blueshift, right, now clients are customers are being bombarded now with a lot of new features that are coming out across every platform. I think, Kat, you alluded to it a little bit of just like, get back to basics, don't get too distracted by the shiny new toy, but you want to take advantage of things because there are great new capabilities. So you want to take your time, test them, figure out how to use them, and then execute against it. So really utilizing the new capabilities that are coming out across the MarTech ecosystem. The second is that MarTech optimization. We are getting a lot of inquiries just from the past few years with the economy, what it was a couple years ago. There was a big pause. People weren't spending as much money or they were reevaluating. But now there's some churn happening where it's, okay, what is going on in the entire ecosystem of the MarTech stack? Am I using paid media correctly? Am I using the right tools to get data into Blueshift? Am I on Snowflake? Am I on AWS? Are we using that to the full capacity? Really a lot of those deep dives into what is that holistic view of that MarTech stack and just piecing that together and just looking at it from an architecture perspective to get to optimization. And then the third one is web traffic resolution. Newer phrase for us, but it's something that we've seen an uptick on in the past 9 to 12 months. We're getting rid of the cookies. We all heard about that. Okay. So web traffic resolution is really geared at trying to get at anonymous to known customers. One example that we have, I'll give this because I don't think anybody in here competes with them, but we have a couple clients that are auto dealers, right? They own a bunch of different auto dealerships. But when you go look at a car, oftentimes you pretty much never log in, right? You don't really give a lot of information. So the dealerships really have no idea who is browsing their site, but they're throttling up like crazy with Google and Meta and just pounding you with ads wherever you go, retargeting, et cetera. So web traffic resolution is being able to identify that person based on IP address and some other things. Obviously, based on privacy rules and compliance and what we can share and what you can't. But getting to, okay, this person is from this state. Maybe they're in this zip 9. So you know geographically where they're located, maybe their income, and some of the other types of things of that area. And then when they go in, if they do purchase an automobile, or if they fill out a form for a test drive, now we can link that profile together. And when we talk about first-party data, now we have augmented first-party data that we can utilize, and we can start to see a little bit better. Web data is messy, admittedly, but a little bit better of how that ad spend is paying off or not based on conversions.
Shamir?
How many more times do we need to say AI?
Yeah, we got to get it in 10,
30?
30?
I'm not doing that. Yeah, so in addition to AI, and just really to echo Tim's thought, it's definitely about experimentation, measured control experimentation in terms of how you're going to leverage that into the system. One thing we really encourage is having a roadmap of what it is you're going to test, of having a way to be able to prioritize those tests in the roadmap, and certainly including AI into that, because as was mentioned, that's part of the problem is that as marketers, we like shiny new things. It's just the nature of who we are. And unfortunately, when those shiny new things come out, they put a lot of pressure on us. We feel like we need to be using them, like we're supposed to be using them. Our colleagues are telling us that. Certainly the companies, Blueshift, are telling us we need to use those things. So we feel a lot of pressure that we need to leverage these technologies. And sometimes it's often better to kind of pump the brakes a little bit and slow down and say, okay, how does this make sense for me? How does this make sense for my company, for my customers, for what our business goals are, and then leverage it into that. And maybe it doesn't make sense tomorrow. Maybe it makes sense in a month. Maybe it makes sense in 6 months. Maybe it makes sense in a year. So having a roadmap and understanding where this comes into play is going to be really critically important because, frankly, maybe you're just not ready to use it. You're not set up right that way from a data standpoint in order to be able to really leverage and use it. You don't have the foundation in place. You don't have the framework and processes in place to properly measure and understand what's going to happen. So, with as fancy and as shiny as a new toy AI is, it's still one of those things. It's just like anything else. You have to find the proper place for you and the proper place for your customer and how to leverage that. The other thing we work with companies a lot on is personalization and how they get into personalization, not just from an email or communication perspective, but from a website perspective as well. So personalization across the entire journey, across that entire digital experience and how we do that. And what we find with that is that the doorway into that is often experimentation and A/B testing of kind of getting those learnings and using those learnings to kind of get into personalization and not getting lost in the fact that personalization isn't just about saying, like, what's the best promotion for this person? It's not just about what's the best product for this person. Those things are important. But often it's just about saying, how do we reduce friction for this particular person? How do we provide something more relevant for this person? How do we highlight the appropriate value points for that person? Just doing those things will get you farther along the way, and you won't have to throw a discount at them, and you'll get more people to convert. And those are the kinds of things that make finance very happy, because now all of a sudden you're driving more money, and now you're just not driving revenue, you're driving profitability for the organization. And a profit argument for the CFO is going to be a lot stronger than a revenue argument for the CFO, because he's smart enough to know that you're saying revenue, and you're assuming I think that's a good thing, and a good CFO knows I can have a lot of revenue, and it could be a worse thing for my organization. But profit, okay, well now you're speaking my language. So a lot of times as marketers, we don't make that translation. We're just about sales. We're just about transactions. And those things are critically important. But we have to understand from a finance perspective, it's profit. It's how we're managing costs while increasing revenue, or perhaps maintaining revenue and reducing costs to increase that margin. And if we can make those kinds of arguments, it'll be easier from the CFOs to get the money back to say, hey, I want to invest in making these kind of enhancements in the organization. And then along those same lines, development is a key point we run into as well, because for a lot of organizations, it's just a bottleneck of trying to get things in the queue to get things done, and the queue is just forever long, and you can't get anything prioritized in that queue. So along those same lines, as you experiment, as you learn, as you tweak, at least now, as you go back and say, okay, development, these are the changes we need to make to our website, or these are the integrations we need to make, at least now you have data behind it to be able to say, here's the ROI on this investment in time and energy and resources in making that change. So really understanding that, and the two that were up before, Kat and Nick, were talking about testing and optimization and how important that is. Ultimately, testing and optimization it's a decision engine, right? It's just a way of making better decisions, of being able to better quantify those decisions, and then being able to use that as an argument to say, this is why we should be doing this. This is what kind of priority it should take in the face of these other things, so that we're not, I think it was Jeff, we're not spending money to fix the time clock here. We're spending money to say, this is something that we know is going to impact the business because we have the data to show it's going to impact the business. So focusing on those things seems to be important.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. I think we've talked a lot about data today. I know I want to kind of bring it home again. Vineet talked about data being sort of the new gold. Tim, I think about like your org as sort of data surgeons. Can you kind of break down, again, we can kind of take it from like basics to like more complicated customers. Like, can you break down how do you sort of, when you're thinking about data strategy, like how do customers start with from simple to basic, simple to more complex as it relates to CDP, but also as it relates to sort of cross-channel?
Got it. Data surgeon, I like that.
I
My
know.
wife's going to be really impressed.
That
I'm now a
website's
surgeon. Data is, I think it was said, yeah, right? Data is the new gold, the new oil. It's the fuel for all of the AI capabilities and everything else. And it's really like an awesome data day for those that are, been around this sphere for more than 10 years, right? There was a time period where having conversations for people in marketing, data was nobody cared. It was like data, that's a data problem, that's hard, that's this. Today, I mean, it's been great to see data. Similarly, to your point, just yesterday I was talking to somebody, one of our clients, Fortune 1000 healthcare company. For 5 years in a row, they had a data line item in the budget, data integration and data governance. And every year they were getting this pushback, like, why isn't it lower? I thought you did that 5 years ago, blah, 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 blah. This was the first year that the person on the CFO side or everything else was like, I get it now. That's driving AI. So the conversation around data is a lot easier, but the conversation's still the same. So today at the roundtables, we were at the first party data piece. I think everybody we were talking to was like, yep, we have duplicate data. We have data challenges. The same blocking and tackling around first party data. So we're creating a lot more data, but the quality of it is still, in some organizations, is still lacking. And that's where, yes, we help, or organizations, you can do it on your own, but if you don't have an infrastructure in place already, it's a little easier. You have a clean sheet of paper. But most places, it's how do you migrate from yucky to clean? And there are ways to do that, especially if you're also coupling that with the cloud migrations. So if you're moving from on-premise potentially to Snowflake, it's a great opportunity to do that. Or if you've just put your toe in the water for Snowflake, it's a great opportunity to do that. And then especially as you look at the new capabilities that are coming out from Blue Shift's perspective, okay, what things do you need to do to tee up the data beforehand, to get rid of some of the duplicates, to enhance the data quality, to then tee it up when it's going into Blue Shift? We have one client that's, you can think of it as like Orange Theory. It's a competitor, but it's not Orange Theory. But so they have a lot of healthcare studios around the US. But every time you go into a studio, you have to check in as a member. And when you do that, based on how their system is set up, you have to actually create that profile in that system, which then feeds back to their main database for their main marketing. So what happens? If somebody's traveling around, like if anybody's from out of town today and you wanted to go visit the local Orange Theory, okay, great. They just created a new profile for you. So on the back end, from a marketer's perspective, horrible nightmare, as you can, those that are in the game totally understand at this point. But so putting that layer up front, that is looking at that, being able to dedupe, be able to pick the best one or the best ones, and figuring out based on the use cases of that, how should we load that into Blue Shift so that you can take action and activate against it.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you. And at Blue Shift, we think about this framework of who, what, when, how, right? So the who is about the data, the what is about sort of content, recommendations, personalization. So, Shamir, obviously, we've talked about personalization quite a bit. Someone that's kind of starting off in their journey of personalization. Well, maybe tell us a little bit of how do you think about personalization? Maybe even if you think about the crawl, walk, run approach, like where do you start? Where do you and how do you kind of move up that sophistication level?
Yeah, so kind of mentioned it earlier. I think whenever I think about optimization, just in general, and in terms of personalization, I always think about it first of like, what is the friction? Like, what is getting in the way of people doing what we want them to do, and oftentimes what the person already wants to do, and how can I first focus on removing the friction, because that's the lowest hanging fruit. So leveraging personalization to do that. Then kind of stage two is, okay, I've removed a lot of the friction. Now, what can I do to persuade the person to do this? How can I kind of be a salesperson to this person and persuade them of the need to be able to move forward and take the next appropriate action? And then the third and final step of that to me in the process is then now, if that's not working, now I will look to incentivize the person. Now I will look to say, well, here's a promo, or here's a sale, or here's a coupon, or whatever the case is to do that. I think a lot of times as marketers, we kind of flip that order. Probably because, again, it's easy. It's easy to throw a promotion at someone. It's easy to throw a coupon. It's easy to throw a discount at someone. But that costs a lot of money, and that's what gets finance angry at us when that happens, because we're spending all this money. And it gets us so trapped in these cycles of constantly just discounting everything. And then at some point we realize, oh, I guess we can't do that anymore. And then we don't know how to get out of that cycle. And it's hard, and it's a common problem across numerous organizations. So when I think about personalization, I think about saying, look, for a second, let's put the discounts aside. You can certainly use the discounts, and if you are running a sale, that's a great way to be able to remove friction of saying, hey, let's make sure that when the person has the email, they see the sale, they click on the email, they go to the website, they see the sale again, that story carries through, and I'm personalizing that particular person's journey or experience. But other than that, I think it's really about saying, what is causing this person friction? And how can I remove that? And friction can differ by audience segments. So personalization could be about saying, okay, what's friction for this particular audience? We had a client once that we did a test on a button in their checkout process, and the button said, it's a travel client, and the button said book now. So you click book now, it goes to the page where you put in all your personal information, you put in your credit card, and then you actually buy. So we said, great, we're gonna make this better. We're gonna change that button from saying book now to enter your information, because that's a more accurate description of what you're doing. Because we figured, buy now, that's scaring people away. That test failed horribly. Like, people hated it. Like, it just didn't do well. So then we said, okay, change it back to book now. But then we had a line of microcopy below the button that says, you won't get charged. Your credit card won't get charged. That did fantastic. And when we broke down the data, we found that it specifically did fantastic against an older demographic. A lot of their traffic was an older demographic. They needed that level of confidence positioned to them in that particular way.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's not about saying we're optimizing this experience for everyone. Sometimes we're optimizing this experience for this particular group of people, for these particular audiences, and finding those friction points and eliminating them allows us to really move forward in a way that, again, doesn't necessarily cost us more money, but actually makes more money because we're thinking about people and groups and segments, and again, trying to get that down to a one-to-one as much as we reasonably can.
Got it. All right. Well, I think we're almost at time, but I had many more questions, but I'll leave. I'll ask the last one. We talked about activating this data. We've spoken a lot about traditional channels like email, SMS. I know Kat mentioned syndications. Are there other channels that you've seen success in?
Given the time constraint, I'll keep it somewhat short, and if anybody's curious during cocktails, I'll be happy to share more. But maybe two would be to a next best action sort of solution into a call center or a chat bot. So at the time, for some of the industries, if somebody's calling in, when you call in, it's not always about an offer. It could just be about updating your profile. Again, back to the data. Data is really important. So hey, if you don't have a full, complete profile, that may be the first thing that you want to get from somebody when you talk to them instead of trying to sell them something else. So next best action deployed to call center or chat bot. Another one that was neat, some of you are probably already doing this, but is, okay, when we are pushing out for marketing messaging to get somebody to watch video content, being able to monitor that video content and include that into the journey so as to then their next step. So specifically in healthcare, a lot of healthcare related things, hey, they want to educate their buyers. It could be true in other industry where you're trying to educate the buyer. They have to watch a video, but how much of the video did they watch? Did they watch 5 seconds or the whole thing? And then you do want to tailor your messaging next off of that. And so we see where they are at a point in time and then be able to follow up that journey. So I took way more time as we're over, sorry.
No, well, I know we're out of time. I think our next session should be more than 20 minutes, but I appreciate you all. And thank you, everyone. And I know I'm going to hand it over to Todd for Omnis.